There, everybody. Is the mic working? Sounds like it is. So what a great day it's been. Thank you to the IdeaFestival for having me today. It's exciting to see all these fresh entrepreneurial to-be faces out here in the crowd. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be an entrepreneur, and we'll see if that describes you or not. So let's just start with a few bullet points. I'm just going to run through these quickly because we're going to blow them up on a slide for each one after this. So an entrepreneur is always willing to take risk. When I was sitting listening to our friend from Pixar, he covered on this subject as well. Risk is the willingness to take risk is typically the single biggest thing that will get in the way of someone pursuing an entrepreneurial career. It's very difficult to make the decision to leave a nice, comfy, cozy, secure job and put your financial and your family's financial situation at risk. So that's probably the number one obstacle to get past. An entrepreneur is a leader, inspires a team, demonstrates that leadership. People want to follow an entrepreneur. They're inspired by their ideas, their enthusiasm. They don't just come up with one good idea. They understand that the first idea is just that. It's just the first idea, but you have to continue to innovate so that you stay ahead of the Me Too's that want to follow along behind you and kick you out of first place. And then there's the social responsibility. It's not just about you. It's about the people who work with you, the customers who buy from you, giving back to your community. So let's talk about each one of these in a little more detail. So let's talk about taking risks. Let me give you a perfect example of probably one of the biggest risk takers I ever met. Back in 2009, I was the Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young for the South Central Ohio and Kentucky region. And once you do that, then you are sent off to the national competition where I didn't win anything. But you're competing against some really big companies. But you get a chance to meet entrepreneurs from all over the country. So we went on an excursion one day that was prearranged for a bike ride, and we met a lady who got on the van with us. And when she got on the van, she wasn't, this is a perfect example of don't judge a book by its cover. She's got a ratty t-shirt on, looks like she used it when she painted her bedroom last week. Her tennis shoes have definitely seen better days. Her hair is kind of bedraggled and messy. But we decided to strike up a conversation with her anyway because she's actually very bubbly, very effervescent personality. What we find out is that she is the entrepreneur. She's there. She won her region in her part of the country. And she built a lab. So think medical, testing, blood tests, things like that. She had that background, she had that education, she was working in a lab, had that perfectly comfortable job, doing quite well, but she knew there was a better way to do it that would not only benefit her to build a business, but also the physicians that were treating the patients and the patients ultimately in their long-term care. It's kind of a complex kind of thing this idea that she had, but she was convinced that she knew she could do this. So she left her perfectly comfortable job and went and started her own lab. She didn't have any money. She had a normal amount of money, like most of us do, a few $1,000s in her savings account, some equity in her house. She mortgaged her house. She maxed out her credit cards. She has no paycheck. And she started this lab. And she hit the road. She decided that in order to make this work, I'm going to have a lot more money, probably about $1 million. And I need to find someone, an angel investor, someone like that will invest and follow me and go on this journey with me. So she started off, she hit the road, she's trying to start a lab, and she's out here trying to pitch her company, her idea. 101 presentations later, and 1 year later, she had 101 no's. Every single person that she pitched her idea to said, nah, I just don't think I can really get behind that. I don't really think you can do that. So she gets to the 102nd person. So how many of you would have kept going after you got the 10th no, the 50th no, the 100th no? Even I think I probably would have said, okay, I guess this isn't going to work. She didn't give up. She got to the 102nd person and finally found the guy that said, I think I believe that you can do this too. He wrote her a check for $1 million. The day the $1 million hit her bank account, she bounced a check for $26.12 in that same checking account. That's how close she was to disaster. 2 years later, her company has $200 million in revenue, and she won the National Entrepreneur of the Year award. That's what taking risk is all about. So they mortgage their businesses, they mortgage their houses, they max out their credit cards, they leave perfectly comfortable jobs, and chances are those 102 presentations that she did over that course of the year, her friends and family didn't see much of her. So you have to create and you have to improve upon either something that already exists or you make it up. It's brand new. So it's more than just a great idea. You have to be able to take that idea and you actually have to execute it and create a business out of it. That's hard. That's really hard. You start with no money, no software, no customers. It's really hard. That's scratch. And you have to scratch and scramble in order to build a real business out of it. It takes a lot of focus. This is probably the most difficult piece for me personally. Entrepreneurs are cursed because they're actually very opportunistic, and so they never stop thinking. They always have another idea. They always have a different way to, you just keep jiggering and jiggering and jiggering until you figure out, how am I going to make this thing work? And lots of ideas come out of that process, but without focus, you can't execute. And honestly, you're actually wreaking havoc within your organization, whether you have 2 employees or 100 employees. If you can't focus and provide the strategy so that they understand what it is you want them to do and how to execute on it, then they're just like a bunch of little cats loose in a room running around. They're all trying to figure out what to do and where to go, but there's no leadership. Driven, obviously. Flexible. Don't get flexible and focus confused. Don't think that they're opposite of each other, because where you start today and what it is that you think you want to build, a widget or a service that you want to provide, whatever it is, chances are a year from now, it's not going to look like what you thought it would look like today. So be flexible, but stay focused. Those 2 things can get in conflict with each other. That's why it's not easy. And always have a plan B and C and D and E and F. You'll need them. So let's talk about what it means to have the focus and the strength of character to lead. So you can't do it by yourself. I guess that's the best way to say it. You cannot build a company, an enterprise, a business by yourself. It's going to take a village. It's going to take a team. So pick what it is that you're really good at, because you have one thing, maybe more than one thing, but chances are it's one thing that you are really, really good at. Maybe you are the best product innovator that you know. Maybe you are a finance whiz. There's something you're really good at. A good friend told me a while back that if you focus on what you are good at and you put all your time and attention into that, you'll go from good to great to phenomenal. But what a lot of people do, the mistake they make, is they feel like they're failing because they're not good at everything, especially an entrepreneur who has to be a jack of all trades, has to figure out how to balance the books, order the supplies, manage the people. So, and there's going to be pieces that they're really good at, and there's going to be pieces where they really are poor at it. Don't beat yourself up and think, because I don't know anything about finance, I'm speaking personally from experience, that I must go over here and educate myself and get really good at finance. So wrong answer. Because what you're gonna do is you're gonna go from dismal to average. You'll never even get to good or great. So focus on what it is, because that one thing that you're really good at is the thing that you can't hire someone else to do as well as you do for your business. So do that, then go hire the team that you need to cover off the rest of it and pay them well. Pay them more than you pay yourself, because you can't do it without them. There's a lot of tough decisions to make. There's been a lot of days where I would, rather be anywhere else than inside my business, but it's mine, it's my responsibility, and I have to make the tough decisions. All I know is that wrestle with it as I may, that my goal is that when I lay my head down on the pillow at night, it's with clear conscience, and that I know I made the best decision that I could. That's all that you can do. There's always skeptics. There's always obstacles. When I started my first business, I remember it was tough. Two little kids, I'm traveling across the country, and my grandmother, who I loved and adored, and it was a mutual admiration society, and she was very proud of me. But I couldn't do it without her help. She was picking the kids up from daycare for me. She was keeping them overnight while I was in Orlando or Lord knows where in this country. And I remember her looking at me one day and saying, "Can't you just get a regular job?" And I understood where she was coming from, but the answer was, well, no, because if I did, and I went and got a regular job instead of working for myself, it's a curse. If I was working at McDonald's, I'd be trying to figure out how you buy a franchise. So it's a curse and it's a blessing all wrapped up into one. But there's skeptics. Just be prepared. You just have to stand firm. So there's competitive. There's competitive differentiation. Why is your mousetrap better than the other guys? So you build the first product. It's great, and the product can be software, it could be underwear, it could be a new bourbon, it can be anything, it can be a service, it can be a spa. Whatever it is, there must be something that's different. Don't make the mistake of thinking that it's feature function or it's price, because somebody always has a different widget than you, and somebody always can price it cheaper than you. There must be a value that you do that's different, that's very difficult for the next guy or the last guy to do as well as you. So there must be some kind of differentiation. Dream big. You have to know where you're going. You have to know that I'm going to start here, but in a perfect world, I'm going to end up way out here. You're not going to get there, probably. It's just like when you buy your first house. When you sell it 10 years later, you walk out the door saying, well, we never did add on that walk-in closet that we intended to do. There's always things that never got done, but at least you knew what it was you wanted to do. You had a vision, and that's what you're going to have to do here. And you always have a product roadmap that leads you along the way. It's going to change. You have to be flexible, but you have to know, where am I going next? There are two different sets of responsibilities, those inside the organization and those outside the organization. Inside, it's all about your responsibility for the staff that is following you, giving you all of that loyalty and dedication, and making sure that you are fair, you are taking care of them, that basically you're doing the same things for them that you expect them to do for you. I used to sit and think, oh my, okay, I've hit a really rough spot, but I can't give up, because I've got 50 people out here that because of this job, they're able to put braces on their children's teeth, they're able to put groceries on their table. So just about the time that you think you're ready to throw your hands up, you need to remember you're not in this alone. Outside the organization, it's pretty obvious you're going to create jobs. You can give back to the community because they are your customers if you're a locally based business. Today especially, there's a big awareness on the social responsibilities of companies. Now, it doesn't mean that you spend half your time running the business and half the time you're out, pouring coffee for someone. I'm exaggerating, but it needs to be in balance, but don't forget to give back. So, as I was getting ready for this presentation, I Googled, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, and just was reading various articles. This one came off of entrepreneur.com, and it was really interesting to me. So I thought I'd share this with you, because as I started reading through these, I thought, oh boy, every single one of those hits home. There is an absolute sense of isolation that comes from sitting at the top, being the one that is responsible, that can be a little suffocating sometimes. All is well. When things are going well, it's a party, and it is a roller coaster. And when you're at the top of the hill, things are great. Everybody's in it together. Everybody's celebrating. But when it's down at the bottom of the hill, when you're down in the trough, everyone sort of scutters away, and they look to you. What are you going to do? That in the middle of the night, when you're sitting there scratching your head, drinking coffee, worrying, it's lonely. It's a lonely place to be. So you need to be prepared for that because there's probably not anybody that can. There are folks who can guide you and coach you, but at the end of the day, the decision is yours, and you need to own it. Most businesses aren't Instagram. They don't sell for $1 billion to Facebook. I wish I had one or two of those. Well, just one would do me just fine. But most businesses aren't like that. Typically, they provide a living, if you're lucky, a very comfortable living. There's not, we're not Mark Zuckerberg. We're not the founders of Instagram. We're not the founders of Groupon or LinkedIn. Most people start a business, they work hard, they make a good living. So, for example, a restaurant owner that's had a restaurant for a few years probably is going to find themselves in a position where they probably are making about the same amount of money as they would have had they been the manager of someone else's restaurant. That's a typical expectation. But you own the business. Now, what does that mean to you? It means someday you can sell that business. It's all about equity growth. That's what you're growing. That's what you're working for, is I'm building this business. I can take a little bit out for myself, but I'm trying to make it worth a whole lot more money so that someone else is going to want to buy it. But don't expect overnight success. Don't expect phenomenal, incredible wealth. There's just very few of those. Those are actually the exceptions. It takes a long time to build a business. My first business, I started in 1986, and had that business for about 10 years and got that one to about $1 million in revenue. It's nothing to sneeze at, but it's no Instagram. The next business, it didn't work. It didn't work. Had to shut that one down. The next business was iPay. We started that one, and 10 years later, right on the 10-year mark, we sold that business for $300 million. So it was a lot of hard work. To the rest of the world, we looked like an overnight success, but that was 20 plus years of plugging away and building more than one business and learning from each one in order to be able to figure out how to do it right, how to do it well. So before I close, on the same site, entrepreneur.com, they had this little test that said, are you an entrepreneur? So go answer these questions and we'll tell you. So I started reading down through these questions and started chuckling because I discovered that, wow, okay, I'm answering yes to almost all of these questions. I'd never done this before. So questions like, were you a stubborn child? My grandmother, my parents, I'm sure they would, were fortunate enough that they were here with me today. They would be vigorously nodding their head yes. Are you willing to work as long as it takes with little or no sleep? There's nothing in these questions that are exaggerated. If you fail, one doesn't work, will you start another one immediately? It's a curse. If you're an entrepreneur, the answer is probably yes. Would you take all of your savings and put it into a business? Are you willing to take that kind of risk? Are you an optimist? Would you be willing to borrow from your family and friends? Almost every single entrepreneur that you meet will answer yes to all these questions. Now, this isn't all of the questions. These were just a handful that I pulled out. So if you want to find out for yourself if you have the DNA to be an entrepreneur, just go out to entrepreneur.com and take the test and see where you land. So with that, I'll close. I think the questions are going to be at the end of all three. So, okay. I'll look forward to your questions. Thank you very much. Thanks for being so attentive.